So anyway, let's take a look at this guy. He's called Millennial Man, and he's American. He's speaking to a bunch of Europeans. So he says, since most of you are European, I guess this is a good place to post this thought. I keep pondering this idea of why my country, the US, is drifting further away from feeling committed to Europe. I notice it more and more. When I was a child in the 90s, we had a very sense of duty to help protect Europe. Now I will be surprised if NATO lasts another decade at this point. A child in the 90s. Let's have a look at this kid. Yo, dude, you're like 30. You were 4 in the 90s. Okay, so we can ignore the 90s, dude. Like, yeah, I don't know, dude. You remember 90s movies, and I don't know what you thought that was. Or something that's not, you don't know what the 90s happened. Anyway, okay. I was a child in the 90s, and I was born in 1978. And I was still growing up in the 90s. And in the I can remember the 90s, I can talk about them, I can comment on them. Do you know who can't? My nephews, who were born like 10 years later, 14 years later, 12 years later, something shit like that. Okay, anyway. Trump is planning tariffs on the EU. Is he? Well, let's wait and see. We don't know what he's planning. We know he's planning. We only know what he's doing. I should be careful about what people's planning and focus on what people are doing. This was unthinkable on this side of the pond until now, and most Americans cheer it on. Okay, they're trying to. The idea, I believe, is like this is how it's being presented: is um, that everyone's getting too good a deal. People are tariffing us, and we're going to tariff them back, and whatever else. And yeah, why not cheer it on? It's American first. It's okay if it works, if it's really the plan. So we may not be Europeans anymore, but most of our population comes from Europe ancestrally. It's a big part of many Americans' identities since our country is a big mix of people. Many lean on their ancestors' homeland to identify themselves. You'll hear people saying, I'm Italian or I'm Irish, even though they have never lived in either of those places, which I know is a bit annoying for some Europeans to hear. But I feel like there's anger at Europe, so now it's up to anger. And drifting away is possibly due to the demographic changes in Europe. It's hard to feel as connected to a land that no longer looks like you. In World War II, we died to liberate that land. And I have to imagine many men and their families felt it was especially important because it was an ancestral duty to protect Europe, even if we no longer lived there. Well, that's not what happened in World War II, right? You didn't die to liberate our land. We is it's pretty weird using we anyway, but okay. I do it as well. We, you. It's difficult to avoid it. But what happened was, no, they didn't come. No one was involved. You weren't involved. And then Pearl Harbor. And then you're involved for your own reasons, right? Or America was involved. I'll try to not do what you're doing, man. So America then was involved for their own reasons because they got a homeland that they were attacked, that the country was attacked. The same with World War One. They didn't just get involved. People were was like super against it. People were super against taxes to support it. They were like, "This has nothing to do with us, you know. We just get rid of these guys? Didn't we just fight them off not that long ago?" Was the idea. So they didn't think it was. I mean, some people. Okay, so yeah, many men and their families felt it was important because it was an ancestral duty. So yes, some people in America did actually think that, and some people in America wanted to be in the war for those reasons, but lots of them didn't want to be in the war, and they weren't, and America wasn't in the war until Pearl Harbor. So this is like a fucking non-starter, dude. I don't know where you're going with that. So I think these feelings are eroding away when we see hijabs and burqas all over London. He's tribal thinking. We've got a lot of tribal thinking here. Most of you are European, that's your tribe. In my country, the US, that's my tribe. Drifting the tribes just drifting apart. We had a sense of protection for you guys. Okay, tribal stuff. Um, our population ancestrally comes from Europe, tribal. Americans' identity since our country has been. You still hear people saying I'm Italian or I'm Irish. Some more tribal thinking, and again about ancestral duty, which we just spoke about, but tribal thinking. Hijabs and burqas in London, that's okay, tribal. When we visit Paris and it looks darker than Detroit, I don't know. I haven't been to Paris. I can't speak about that. And I haven't been to Detroit. I have no idea. But now is like black people as well are getting a throw, I guess. I don't know, unless he means like Asians in Paris, but I don't know. What I remember from like what I know, which is very little about Paris, is that there's a lot of black people there and stuff because Paris had colonies, but I didn't think that was a new thing. Maybe there's a lot more now than there was then. I don't know. I don't go there. He goes. He knows more than me, I guess, in terms of being on the ground. When we go to Italy and we see more kebab stands than Italian restaurants. I don't know. Is that true? Maybe. I lived in Germany during waves of Syrian migrants over a decade ago. I saw the changes firsthand in many instances. Now Germany feels more like an economic zone. I think Europe needs to militarize very fast and understand it won't have us to lean on much longer for safety. No, he's had a little bit of experience moving around. Um, Living in Germany during waves of Syrian immigrants probably gives you enough time if you're there for a few years to, like he says, see the changes firsthand. And I'm not sure that now Germany feels like an economic zone. Okay, then there's like he quotes Andrew Tate and says Ukraine is the canary in the coal mine moment. All right, so there's a few things I didn't respond to when I was talking just now, and that's because I kind of respond to those here later as I start talking. So I started in reply. First off, it's more than a bit annoying, so I just go back at him joking around. Don't say you're Irish if you're American. And then I joke on another guy on the forum or on the Discord server that he's actually Irish and I'm not. And I go, yo, I'm more Irish than him because my family's from Dublin or whatever. So then I say, look, the Western world, especially in America, really, everyone's medicated and uneducated and autistic, screaming in the street that chopping children's dicks off is compassionate. So, if some part of the population is whipped up into a frenzy about Europe, what does that really mean? It's not. These are like the most easy people to just program and like the useful idiots, but not in the sense of like how people call people like Tucker a useful idiot, which I don't agree with. Useful idiots, sorry, but just like morons who are so easily mind controlled. Like in the 80s and the 90s, which he kind of talks about there, people were brainwashable because they were in contact with brainwashing materials for like 2 or 3 hours a day. Watching some television, reading a newspaper, maybe 4 hours, something like this. You could say listening to pop music was part of the brainwashing, but if you're really paying that much attention to it or whatever, I don't know. And schooling maybe when you were younger, but like the real brainwashing was like the news and stuff and TV and movies. And that was like a 3 or 4 hours of your day if you were a heavy user. And the rest of the time you were out in the real world with real people, like going back and forth and stuff. And so then now, and the people weren't medicated and they were they could speak pretty well. Later in this thread, I shared a video of some kids who went into a petrol station in America near like Disneyland or something, and they're filming with a handy cam, it seems like in 1987 or whatever it says. And everyone who comes in, they all have something to say. They all start role playing and fucking around. Like it's pretty cool. Everybody is kind of an interesting person that's capable of social interaction. Um, and then they redid it 30 years later. They refilmed it just now, and it was crazy different. There's this guy there, and he's like holding two huge Gatorades of different flavors, and he's kind of like shaking his head a little bit. And they go, "What are you getting there, man?" And he's like, "Gatorade." And they're like, "Why? Well, oh, is that why are you getting two different flavors?" I wanted the one to only have the one, and then to get the other one because they didn't have another one. And it's like, oh, okay. And why are you getting Gatorade? I like to run. It's like you run a lot. Yeah, I run a lot. I run 2 miles. How much do you run? 2 miles a day. And Gatorade is for champions, he says. So this is like before you had 3 or 4 hours a day to brainwash these like articulate, reasonably well educated, non medicated people who had social interactions, had real contact with real humans, that they would like, oh, this is real, and then this stuff maybe isn't real, right? And they had that juxtaposition, and now you have this fucking. I like Gatorade for champion. I run 2 miles a day. Need 2 liter Gatorade for champion. So I'm champion. It was fucking wild shit, dude. And so this medicated idiot, who's probably like on the screen every waking minute of the day when he's not buying Gatorade or running 2 miles, is the person that they have to propagandize or mind control or psyop or high magic on. And they have all day to do it. They have like 18 hours a day or 16, however many he's awake for, in order to psyop this guy and work him up into a frenzy about, oh, we hate Europe now. What? Because burkas. Ah, right, okay. So then I go on to say, also we don't like Europe as in what the leaders are doing to it right now. We want America to push back on our governments in ways that we can't. This is the day before Vance dropped his speech as well, so quite timely of me to say that, considering just the very next day or a few hours later, along up pops Vance going, "Hey, yo, Europe, get your shit together." Um, that's Vance doing what we want him to do. We want America to come over and be like, "Yo, sort your fucking shit out, guys. This is crazy. Stop throwing people in prison for liking a post on Facebook." Um, so then I go on to say, I doubt those positive feelings are being eroded when you, general Americans, visit London, Paris, and Rome, because you don't, right? So this idea that, oh, the reason why Americans dislike the Europe is because we've visited London, Paris, and Rome, and we see that it's full of darkies and hijabs and kebab shops, and we don't like that, and we know that it didn't used to be like that. Well, in order to do that, you would have had to have visited those places twice or been in them for a long enough time to watch the change happen. And honestly, talking about London, I'm from the UK, and I left there a little over 10 years ago, I guess, and I went back about 3 years to get my passport renewed, and I was in London for like 10 days, and with nothing to do, just like wandering around. And like in terms of how many, obviously Anglo-Saxon faces I saw compared to not, couldn't really tell you any difference. Like in terms of like what London looked like, whether it looked rich or poor, whether the streets were maintained or not, all that kind of shit. Couldn't tell any fucking difference. I'm not from London, so if you're from there, maybe you've seen things changing more than I would, and maybe if I went to Manchester, which is where I'm from, I would notice it more. I don't know. I watched some Charlie Beach videos recently. Didn't really see the difference too much. Didn't like that they now have tents down near the library. That's pretty crazy that we're let in the UK. People are like camping outside permanently in the middle of a city centre, and that's just being allowed. Um, and that's true. That's happened in the last 3 months. There's like 20 tents in Manchester like this, but in America, it's like that now for a decade. In the big cities, there's like homeless camps everywhere and like just fucking drugged up zombies everywhere. But no, the reason why you hate us is because there's 20 tents near a library in the centre of Manchester. Boy, oh boy. But the truth is that like some people, yeah, like him, obviously, because he's a tribal thinker, and a lot of people are tribal thinkers, and there's a lot of tribal rhetoric that goes around because they want these people they want to try and steer these people this way, and like tribal people are pretty easy to steer. Even Putin does it. Like Putin's clearly like a high level strategic thinker. So much so that, and Trump does this as well, where they'll communicate to people on all the different levels. They'll say some tribal shit. They'll say some like goals oriented shit. They'll say some emotional shit. Right. So, Trump will be like, America first. We need to get out of these wars. America first. Um, we need to get out with a good deal. We need to get something back for what we've put in. We want those rare earths, right? We need some promises on the back of this. So that's tribal. Then that's objectives and goals. And then the emotional thing is like we need to I want people to stop dying, right? Putin does similar things. He speaks to people on all those different levels because he knows that there are a lot of people at some of these levels, and sometimes some of those people have power who think at those levels, and so these people need to hear this type of rhetoric to bring them on board. But a strategic thinker like these guys, they're doing one of two things there, which is hard to tell which one of those two things they're actually doing. But they're either taking advantage of the fact that they have this strategical view in which they can see all the levels of hierarchy underneath them and organize their communications in a way that appeals to all those people in order to collapse that to benefit like an objective based, like an outcome based. The goal is the important thing. Um, Result or process or set of actions. That's the actual this is the primary mode is like objective win, um, and the strategic nested hierarchies type of communication is just done to appease all those different areas. It's like a tactical thing, or possibly it is actually being done in a way where, and what we want is an integral solution that where this is not just rhetoric in order to in order to win an objective, but actually it's really how we think, and it doesn't only achieve the objective, it changes how the world looks at things and considers things and takes us into um, another, what's the world age, a new age, right? Beyond what they're currently calling the information age. Anyway, I went around the houses there. I talked a bunch on that shit. So yeah, that in order for Americans to really be having positive feelings eroded by visiting London, Paris, and Rome, lots of Americans would actually have to be doing that, which they're not. Like half don't have a passport and so on. How many of those who do have a passport actually go to these places or actually come to Europe twice with a space of like 10 years or more in between so that they would be able to be, so that an American visiting London twice would, for a few days or whatever, would notice better than me, somebody who lived in the UK and has spent time in London, and then going back to it, not really seeing any difference. How are they gonna? So it's not that I'm saying that he's wrong about this tribal stuff in this point. I'm just saying that there's no way that feelings are being eroded. Not only does he have a tribal view, but he's unable to see beyond his own experience. He's like, oh, I went to London and Paris and Rome, and then I went again after a period, and I was in Germany. I stayed there a long time, and I've seen these things. And I've also seen this, what he sees as an erosion of positive feelings. And then for him, he probably has his own erosion of positive feelings because he wants Europe to not look like this. And therefore, he is seeing that every American who has eroded positive feelings is because they also visited London, Paris, and Rome. It's just a crazy thing to say, man. I shouldn't really call it crazy, but it's crazy. I should look for a better word. So then I start to just play with this idea of Ukraine being the canary. What's the analogy exactly? Should Europe just simply stop mining coal in Ukraine in this, canary in the coal mine situation? But who didn't already know that? Like, Ukraine cannot join us. We're not supposed to be doing this. Like, it's known since forever that it's an existential threat for Russia to allow Ukraine to join Europe and NATO and this kind of thing. It's just not going to be allowed by them. They will be completely. They don't want to be completely shut off. So we already knew that we shouldn't be mining coal in Ukraine. In this analogy of mining coal is trying to bring them into the EU and NATO. So then I offer him another option. Maybe you meant to say that Ukraine is the canary, as in the whole of Europe should be evacuated, because even though there's just gas in that little corner, we should get the fuck out of Europe. Maybe, I don't know, this is deadly Russia gas, kills the canary, Ukraine is going to keep leaking and kill all of Europe. That's like the other possibility, right? That after he kills the canary, he's going to just keep going. Putin and Russia, and they're expansionist, and they're going to take over Europe unless we completely have our own army and modernize and blah blah blah. But I don't think they have the resources for that, nor the will or the desire, and I don't really think it's expansionist. So I ask him the question if he thinks it's expansionist. And so then he makes a bunch of more statements. In my country, half the population loves Putin. A lot of my family loves Putin. Why? Because they see Russia as the last bastion of a white Europe, to just put it bluntly. Maybe that's the why. I mean, he gives no reason for that why that's the why. But again, it's just tribal thinking. So, like, he doesn't understand to say that half in my country half the population loves Putin. So that would be that to say that at least 50% of the population. And the reason is because it's they see Russia as the last bastion of white Europe. That would mean that at least half the population is tribal thinking, and all are tribal thinking in this particular way. The reason why they love Putin, and it's because they see Russia as the last. So that means that way more than half of the country would be in tribal thinking mode. Maybe I don't think so, man. I think a lot of your country is in like emotional thinking mode, is in like empathy mode, and being a good boy and a good girl mode. Like the online, this is all about like likes and stuff. I got more likes than you. I got more likes than you. So that's popularity, that's acceptance or whatever. So that's what people are concerned with. And who are they concerned with being accepted by? It's most of the time now. Well, if you're a guy, it might be like logical guy people, but generally at the moment, what people who people are looking for approval from and acceptance from and group, even this could be a tribal in a way, but what the group they're trying to be a part of, the thing that they want to be told they're a good boy by or a good girl by, is the empathetic thinkers, the people who are saying, yo, we should be empathetic to everybody. They're the people dishing out all the likes online, and they're the people. So if you are affected by likes and you're trying to get likes, they're the people you're trying to please. So I don't know if this is really like half your country is in tribal mode and yeah, anyway. So half of my country basically, I try to explain that Russia is a very diverse country already, but the overall image is of a white ethno state. Half of my country basically wants to cut Europe loose from any military protection. In fact, I have zero doubt that if something happens today, we wouldn't respond. Eh, zero doubt. I mean, well, based on what? I think you would. I think they would respond if something happened in Europe. I mean, we've still got, all right, the NATO fucking thingy five, whatever it's called, only got called up once, and it was by America when 9/11 happened. Because no state has been attacked, no NATO state has been attacked, so nobody's had to like pull that card so far. So we don't know what would happen. Um, but he has zero doubt if something happens today, we wouldn't respond. But half the country then doesn't want to do that. I don't get the impression from Trump that he wouldn't respond or that they're not involved. I get the impression that they want to be involved, they want to get closer, they need us as an ally, and whatever else. They want us to hold down Russia for them while they go fuck off a little bit and deal with China or something. That seems to be part of the game. I'm not even putting that forward as a theory. These are just words, right? So then he's being kind of nice about it at the end, saying, that's the, oh, I haven't blah blah blah. That's the whole point. How did this happen in such a short time? It didn't. It didn't. Again, like no one wanted. No one, but like most people didn't want to get involved in World War One and World War Two, and there only was involved when there were attacks on America in both cases. Most clearly and most memorably for us, I don't really know that much about World War One, but I know more about World War Two. The Pearl Harbor, as everyone knows. That's what brought you in. You weren't here. You weren't out protecting us then either. So what do you mean cut loose Europe from military protection? We weren't. We've never been demonstrably under it, right? So he says again, I truly believe it's the mass migration into Europe. So zero doubt, truly believe, which is well covered in the US, making many resentful of our relationship with Europe. I'm not attributing value to this statement. Zero doubt, true belief. Half of my country. Okay. But I guess what he's trying to do, he's just trying to back off and be like, oh, let's try and talk about it. And I said the same here. I actually wrote before him or whatever. I think we published on exactly the same minute, more or less. I didn't see his thing, but I just put, oh, I woke up and wrote all that, so it's not like my fully considered opinion. He says, no worries, I'm failing to word it too. So it's all nice at this point, right? And again, I'm being nice with him. I just say, I don't believe half your country have any opinion on it at all. Can they even point to us on a map? Do they know what a map is? right? And those that do, I think it's as interesting and as relevant to Europe's military situation as whether they like Taylor Swift or not. So again, excuse me, your moron in the fucking petrol station with his two Gatorades for champions because he runs 2 miles a day or whatever, shaking his head and shit. If like his fucking mind control machine told him to be angry about Europe for 5 minutes and then he wrote, fuck Europe or something, who cares? It's as interesting as whether he likes Taylor Swift or not. He was pointed in that direction because he's a brainless moron by some bullshit that he read. He'll be pointed in another direction tomorrow by these same people because these are his thought leaders who he wants likes from and he wants to virtue signal to. And they're not controlling anything out here either. So even if they weren't Mongs, they don't have control of any of the switches or buttons. I don't really care. Just like the Taylor Swift fans, who cares? They don't even know what a map is my humble opinion. So maybe the US has been putting Europe in danger, not protecting it. European countries have been fighting in US neocon wars for decades, making those nations and cultures hate us and bring terrorism to our lands. That terrorism is meant for you guys, and it creates a migrant crisis. Then you're going to say, oh, gross, they're full of migrants now. And then let's dip, right? This is basically what's going on. It's a crazy story. But I'm just flipping it around. I'm not really saying anything here. I said maybe, maybe the US has done this. But I'm just kind of mocking his narrative there, right? What about how places have changed in 10 years or so? By all accounts, your cities are full of sub-cities of methed up zombies and no one gets arrested for crimes. But they're not Islamic, so... but they're not Islamic, so what exactly? Why is this a thing? I mentioned this stuff to you before. So I go on to say, I don't think Russia is a threat. I don't think Europe is in danger. And whoever America is going to interfere with next, they will undoubtedly be doing it with the help and support of their European partners. Do you think we're in Syria because it helps the UK? Right? Okay, we're in Iraq twice. That was for us. Ukraine and Gaza, this is for us. That's why we're involved in these things. It helps the UK somehow. It helps Spain. It helps France. What are you talking about, dude? So these are your wars. If we get in danger, it's your danger, and now we've accepted it. And then I don't know, man. I'm going pretty loose here. The UK is the aggressive lapdog of the US. What's the threat? The threat from the UK, from the US to America to the UK. What is it? The threat is we will stop putting you in danger. Then who will protect you? And then I say, the UK's got nukes. Stop making us a target. No one's going to fuck with us. We got nukes. Also, US support for military alliance with Europe has been tumultuous throughout history. The idea that we have stood proudly together is in movies only. When we talk about what the people think, even if true, and then I go on to say about the 2 liters of Gatorade guy. Then there's some normal conversation on the forum that doesn't have anything. It's just me and Dan going back and forth about who's more Irish. Then the Vans thing comes up, and everyone's like, yo, nice one, Vans. Thanks for that. Some jokes about MAGA. More jokes about Ireland. Let's kill all the Irish. And then my boy's back here. Eventually, talking about British judges. He says human rights, blah 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 blah, and I point out that human rights are not real, and he agrees with me, but I'm not sure if he understands it in the same way that I understand that statement. Some jokes about the ADF or the AFD, blah 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 blah, and then your boy comes back here with this. So this guy Gabrielius Landsbergis, who used to be someone involved in Europe or something, said the current the current U.S. administration does not see the EU as it once did. Culturally, it sees itself aligned with the movements within Europe that are interested in destruction, and this raises the very concerning question, what now are the US interests in Europe? And so my boy here, Millennial Man, takes that as absolute confirmation of everything that he was saying, that because this one guy says this one thing, and he's like, very interesting considering what I said on here the other night was scoffed at. Dude, I didn't scoff at you. Scoffing means like heavy ridicule and attack. I asked some questions. I went over it and said, "Well, what about this and what about this? Is it that way or is it this other way? Maybe it's this way. Have you looked at it from this angle? Blah 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 blah." I wasn't scoffing, even when I sometimes was like, "Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think this is right," more than just being maybe what if. But I wasn't scoffing. There was no scoffing at all, right? But I'm glad European security counterparts are noticing this trend finally. So this is him being like, I, with my infinite wisdom, have noticed this trend for a long time. I've been watching things happen, but I'm glad that European security counterparts are now also noticing this, which is also a dig at me, being like, hey, European security counterparts are saying what I said, therefore you're an idiot for saying what you said. Whatever, dude. So Americans are losing their bond with Europe fast. So just repeating that shit again. I'm almost certain it's due to mass migration both in Europe and the US. Never like given anything to back this. No evidence for it. No argument for it, except his own personal experience of traveling a lot to America. A dwindling white population in the US wanted to look overseas and see Europe as a homeland of brothers, but our brothers opened their homes to the world. That was nice of them, right? And now Europe is as diverse as the US in many areas. Europe was probably, I mean, England was already probably more than diverse than the US, pretty much for a while. This has huge implications for a continent that has relied on the US for protection to fund generous social programs that our own citizens don't get because we have to fund the world's policeman military that we also get criticized for all the time. Dude, that is a lot going on here. So this has huge implications for a continent that has relied on the US for protection. We haven't relied for the US for protection. What he's trying to say there is that there's an inequality, the known inequality between how much America is putting into NATO and wars and problems that we get into as a group. He is, according to Trump in America, I have never looked into the figures. I'm going to take everyone's word for it. Completely imbalanced compared to what Europe is putting in. So Europe is putting in not enough, not their fair share, and they should put in more. And that this, like, what is a fair share for Europe? I think it's reason why it's so low is because it was based on post World War II. Europe was all messed up, and now we're not in that situation. So some of these contracts need to be renegotiated, is the idea. So his statement that Europe is a continent that has relied on the US for protection, what he means is that according to the current government, who are possibly correct, um, America has been paying more than what they consider their fair share in terms of, I don't know, economics of the nation or population or risk towards these problems, little mini wars that we've been getting involved in that were for America, that America wanted to do. Like the Russia-Ukraine thing is an American proxy war. The Israel thing is that's because America is tied up with Israel. It really has very little to do with the UK, except that the UK is just here to be the most closest partner to America. Um, so we haven't relied on the US for protection. We've not required to have been protected. We've not been in danger. The US has never protected us in any way, even if we might have like philosophically relied on it, thinking like, oh, they'll be there or whatever. Or, the US NATO is really what we're talking about. And so then because of this protection, now it sounds like, oh, they've relied on the US for protection, as in they've given us a bunch of money, which we could have used for weapons, but instead we spent it on generous social programs. Okay, back up, but that's not what he means. He means this is what's really going on. So because we don't pay our fair share, therefore we have spare money left over, and we have been able to use that spare money for generous social programs, such as an NHS, for example, right? That our own citizens don't get. And now he's going to say that the reason that America doesn't have an NHS is because they are funding the world's policeman military. Okay, so but even the money that you give to Ukraine at the time in Israel now, right? That money is to buy weapons from America, and they're forced to buy them from America. They're forced to use American shipping companies to bring them over to the Ukraine and Israel in order to be used. So this this money is kickbacks going around and around. It has nothing to do with, oh, we're helping everybody, we're protecting everybody, we're policing the whole world, and because we're spending money on that and nobody else is, that's why you all have National Health Service and we don't. The history of why America doesn't have National Health Service, proper unions, and all this stuff is very long and complicated, and it's really not anything to do with the fact that America is being forced to spend lots of money to protect other nations. That's not what it is. America is not being forced to do that. It hasn't done that. Anytime it has claimed to do that, that's not what it's doing. It's doing things for its own interests, and it's bringing us along with it because it's the major player in all of these things, NATO and the UN and all this shit. It runs the show. If it wants to change things, things will change. No one's going to go to war with America, okay? And no one's going to fucking go against them when they go, this is what we're doing. So they are deciding, let's be involved in this war, let's be involved in this one, let's not be involved over there, let's be involved over here. And we're going to give all this money, and everyone else should give all this other money. And other people are like, well, we're going to give not that much, we're going to give less than that. We're not super down with some of these wars necessarily, right? And then maybe that means they have more to fund their generous social programs. Maybe they should be forced, because they're part of an alliance, to pay their fair share. And we as an alliance should all go around doing these things together because they benefit us all in this global world, right? But the idea that it's the policeman's military, and that that's the reason that money went there, and if that money hadn't gone there, you would have had an NHS and real unions and all this shit. No. Okay? Now Europe is going to be forced to spend real money and try to change the culture real fast to make the continent battle ready to protect itself. Dude, we don't need to be battle ready to protect ourselves. From who? We're not about to start warring amongst each other, amongst ourselves. And Russia isn't like, after failing to take over Ukraine, after really like having this long and drawn out war, which has like ripped money from Russia, killed lots of soldiers, reduced their fucking birth rates and all this shit. They're gonna, like, when this gets tied up, when the contracts get signed and everything gets kind of tied up on this, they're gonna be emboldened by the idea that America's going to be a little bit occupied with China or whatever, and then they're just going to roll into fucking the rest of Europe, and we're not prepared. That's crazy, dude. I don't think they want to do that. I don't think they have the resources to do that. If they did want to do that, I don't think he would have the support to do that. Anyway, okay. So nuclear expansion is a must. The only nation in the EU with even some true nuclear capability is France. The UK has nuclear weapons, but will have to modernize them. I think that's what is it? Intercontinental ballistics and shit. I don't know, but I'm not really. I'm not inclined to really look into this because he wrote some stuff, and I engaged with everything that he wrote and addressed things that he was actually saying. And then he just came back, said, oh, you all scoffed at me. This stupid quote here by this guy proves that I was right. And now I'm just going to blast out more shit. So, like, am I supposed to go now and look up what's the current state of the UK nuclear weapons situation? Do they need to modernize or not? Like, how much modernizing is required? Blah, 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 blah. No, why should I? Because he's not engaging with what I wrote. I'm not willing to now, on the second one, go back around again and, be thorough with it. Why am I going to spend time finding out what the real situation is with UK's nuclear weapons? So then, Europe is the land of strong men. What does that even mean, dude? The land of strong men? A land of strong men, even? What would that even mean? From Napoleon to Hitler. What are two names to just pull out of the hat and just be like, all the way from here to here, Europe was the land of strong men. Like, there's no through line from Napoleon to Hitler, bro. But when I go to Europe, I see too many soft men who don't strike me as defenders of their homeland. Show up at my door, I'll knock you the fuck out, kid. How about that? I'm probably like 10, 15 years older than you. I'll fuck you up. How about that? From this side, I think, from this side of the world, it seems clear fighting tendencies were purposely subdued in some kind of post-World War II guilt trip. The only country that has a post-World War II guilt trip really is Germany. And they're not pussies. They're big, scary guys still. I wouldn't want to get in a fight with most of the Germans that I know. Um, so the idea that like the Europe um, has had its fighting tendencies purposefully subdued through post World War II guilt. Like we thought we were awesome for World War II. When we were kids, we would be like, "We won the war, la 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 la," all the time. Like in school, it was we won 2 wars and fucking 1 World Cup and all this shit. Like, oh, here's the Germans. Don't mention the war, bitches. You lost. Like we thought we were amazing for doing that. It was the Great War, the pure war, the last good war, where the only war where we can say this was pure evil versus pure good was stopping pure evil, and that everyone died for a wonderful thing. And weren't we so amazing to stand up and fight on the beaches? We would have fought on the beaches if it were necessary. Right? We wouldn't have rolled over like those frogs. And you know they were embarrassed, like, oh, we should fight harder next time. Whatever the fuck, dude. The post World War II guilt. Where was that? I never saw that or experienced that or heard it in the UK or in well, Spain weren't involved in that. In Norway either. They're super proud of their involvement in World War II. They were involved in the bouncing bombs and some shit like this. I don't know. We fucking love what we did in World War II. And we joke at you guys like showing up at the end and trying to take fucking glory for it when Russia really came in and dealt with that shit, not you guys. Which I don't know if I really believe most of that, what I just said, you know? But dude, post World War II guilt was used to purposefully subdue fighting tendencies in Europe. I don't know what you mean, dude. That's crazy. Conor McGregor is a pretty good fighter. Tom Aspinall is a pretty good fighter. Fucking Michael Bisping was all right for his day. Darren Till should have been a champion. Boxing. We were doing pretty well in the boxing for such a small country, right? Anywho, that leads to migrants raping European women and children with minimal pushback for decades. It's all connected, bro. It is all connected, but not in the ways that he's just like inventing all this shit and never backing it up or anything like that. So the idea that the subduing of fighting tendencies because of post World War II guilt led to Europe being full of soft men, which meant that we let migrants rape European women and children with minimal pushback for decades. No, we didn't. People didn't really know, dude. The whole time I was living in the UK, it wasn't really a known thing. Just like 10 years ago when I was leaving the UK was when people started to talk about talk about this kind of stuff. Um, Maybe Tommy Robinson had spoke about it. But he was, before you really had proper internet to go around and work shit out, he was a very marginalized character. It was difficult to know whether to take him seriously or not. It was difficult to know whether he was a racist or not. People are telling you he's a racist. You don't really have access to anything that he is personally saying. You just have narrative. But the idea that European women and children we were letting them rape, no, that isn't what was happening. If people had known about it, they would have been pushing back more on it. It was all covered up. Anywho. And it wasn't covered up because those people are not for being not fighting people. It was covered up for empathy, like overextended empathy reasons. It's crazy. A level which is a level of thinking way above this guy's tribal level of thinking. So I just come back saying, hey, look, the quote you put there doesn't support anything that you wrote, nor counter anything that I wrote, which it doesn't, like that quote. It kind of stands alone, and who is that guy, and why does that... Oh, so that puts a fucking stamp on everything. No, dude. So the other friend, someone else on the Discord was just talking about getting high on fucking DMT. So he's like, "Are you on drugs too, dude? What is this? Why do you think that's okay? First, so you say that you got scoffed at, which you did not. You got engaged with, and then I say, hey, that just doesn't support this quote. I don't know why it's there. It doesn't support what you think it supports. And then he scoffs. Don't scoff at me. No one did. Scoff. Okay, bro, whatever. So then I just ad hominem. I point out that's an ad hominem attempt, even though it's in a question. Um, it still can be an ad hominem. It's rhetorical, the question, right? And then I just do a recap of everything that happened so far. You wrote something making some claims. I engaged directly with what you wrote. You did not engage with what I wrote and instead quoted something and then made more claims that the quote did not support. I pointed out that was a non sequitur and you started firing out insults. This is a problem. This is a problem right here, okay? But still willing to play with the guy. I'm just trying to get meta on him, you know? Trying to wake him up a little bit, see if he's capable of raising his thinking to another level. So there was nothing after that for a day or two. And then he puts this thing, which makes it look like Starmer is going to put troops in Ukraine now, as in combat troops that would defend Ukraine if Ukraine was attacked. That's not what it means. It means it's part of a security guarantee to send troops there after a peace deal is signed, and that those troops would be probably administrative and stuff like this, but not neither the right type of troop to defend an incursion, nor with that mission goal or that instruction. That's not going to happen. And then I just point out the photo is kind of mental, trying to make Keir Starmer look like a tough army guy that he's out, piercing gays or whatever. It's fucking crazy. So now he's being nice a little bit here. Here's what I have a hard time picturing. Say Russia attacks Ukraine with European troops stationed there. What's the difference? I mean, I get there would be troops to theoretically fight back. That's not what it means. But I don't know. I don't fully understand the point. NATO protection would have Article 3 protection, which is a very distinct thing. It's a declaration of war, essentially. I'm not fully understanding what this would really do. It looks like a show. Yeah, that's what it is, dude. So I say, yeah, there's no way of knowing till things happen because he's being nice. I'm going to be soft with him too, right? Joining some of the visible dots. Zelensky wants to keep going and kick the Russians out. He's got an irrational view of Putin, which makes him inappropriate for peace talks. He's like, we have to get rid of Putin. We have to end him. We have to replace him. He's crazy. He's insane. He cannot be negotiated with. So he's just useless now. Zelensky has completely removed himself from relevance in this. That you can't be that person and get the peace done. So you're out of the question now. He's going to have to do whatever he's told to do because all of his money is coming from pretty much America. And they're going to say, this is what you're going to do if you want the money. The end. And he's holding up elections that he might not win. His popularity is down, right? And he's been flapping on about safety guarantees with and without NATO membership. So it really looks like they're not getting land back and they're not getting NATO membership. So when they put this offer together, it needs to have a bunch of security gestures in it. This is what I'm suggesting, that look like security guarantees that can be spun up in a way that says, oh yeah, maybe if this and that and the other, and we'll start to put together a EU army, like he said, and all this other shit, just enough so that if Zelensky tries to turn down the peace deal, he can't, because it looks like you'll be protected, even though you probably won't. And then I said, I could be wrong, but that just seems to fit the data points. It really seems like there's going to be a deal that includes losing some land and never joining NATO. And the only people who are against that is Zelensky himself, really. So my big thing with Ukraine is that I'm very fond of Poland, and I don't want to see it deal with the same fate as Ukraine, says Millennial Man. Which people will say is ridiculous, but it's really not that crazy if NATO is undermined. Plus Ukraine being taken, which he's saying plus, but he's saying that they're the same thing. NATO isn't being undermined if Ukraine isn't getting taken either. That's not what's happening. Ukraine isn't getting taken and NATO is not undermined. If NATO did get undermined, I mean, that would maybe be them rolling into Portugal. But what do you mean? It's not going to happen in Poland. Sorry, I said Portugal, right? We will see, I guess, but really this goes back to my original point. Militarization is something that many don't want because it costs money, but it's necessary. Ukraine had 200 nuclear weapons at one point. They gave them up and basically demilitarized. And now we see how that ends up. Not good. The world is changing fast. So I say I don't think Russia is expansionist. Again, like he's still not. I spoke about this. I asked him if he thought it was expansionist, and so I tried to explain why I think he's in Ukraine, or one of the big parts of the motivation. Um, so I said they went into Ukraine because they needed to. Why would they go into Poland? They don't need to. And then why I put down the need is, um, okay, first I pull aside and go, by the way, that's not what happened with Ukraine giving up their nukes. Ukraine never had nukes. There were nukes in Ukraine that belonged to Russia. Russia had total control over those nukes, and they were removed from Ukraine because then there was at the time the they couldn't the no non-proliferation of the fucking ballistic missiles. They were like, hey, let's not advance up to ballistic missiles. Let's stay at the non-ballistics. And then if you move your missiles out of Ukraine back into Russia, then you won't be able to hit Poland, which from Ukraine you could. You won't be able to hit Europe because you would need longer range missiles. So, hey, let's all agree not to make longer range missiles, and let's you agree to move those missiles out of Ukraine, so that everyone feels good about it. And so they went, yeah, okay, let's do that shit. Now, he thinks that that was that Ukraine had 200 of their own nuclear weapons that they could have fired at Russia whenever they felt like it, and that they were defending Ukraine at the time from a Russian invasion, and that after those were removed, Putin looks at them and goes, "Oh, they don't even have nukes, and they're not in NATO, so they don't have NATO's nuke backup. I'm just going to roll in there and fuck them up now because they don't have nukes." That's not what happened. It's completely crazy and insane, dude. And so at this point, I'm just looking at this kid like, this is a huge mistake that you made. And you made it basically just because it completely fits your own narrative, your very American way of thinking that, oh, you give up your weapons, look how it turns out. And that's a legit point. If you give up your weapons, you obviously do have less ability to defend yourself, and then you will see how that turns out, right? But it's such an American narrative that they like to pretend that everything bad that happens after that is because of that, even though often it could be. But it's not like, well, let's look at America. Having your guns, is that really stopping your government from like oppressing you? And just no, not at all, not really. So yeah, you've got them. That's great. Maybe it helps you in certain ways and stuff, and that's good for you. And I'm not against it. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying that in this kid's head, he has such tied into like simple ways of thinking that for him just to hear that Ukraine had 200 nuclear weapons at one point, just jumps straight to this. Or maybe he was told it in that way where, oh, look, they used to be able to defend themselves, but they gave up 200 nuclear weapons. Didn't check that one bit, published it on here as part of an argument. And so I point out that's not what happened. And then I go on to say, the reason why Russia is in Ukraine right now, or part of the reason, is they forced it partly by paying for the coup a few years ago to overthrow the democratically elected government in Ukraine and replaced it with a more pro-US join EU one, and partly by trying to bring them into the EU after that with a view to NATO membership. I should have said and other parts, but I didn't. But I didn't say that's everything. These two things are part of the reason. I could have clarified that even together, they're not the whole reason. I didn't. So Ukraine is a known red line that Russia, since the end of the Cold War, have made it clear that they consider an existential threat for the West to encroach on Ukraine. Going by what is public, all the documents that we have available to us, it was very much provoked by people who knew exactly what they were provoking. And there's a great book called Provoked about this. Also, and then I go back on the nukes and just say they never had nukes. The deal was for Russia to stop using it as a place to store their nukes and or launch nukes from, etc. And his response to that is, oh, damn, boomer talking points from 2023. And in this next comment, he doesn't address at all his huge error of saying that they used to have 200 nukes, but now they don't. So, and he just goes back to the top thing again. Why is Russia doing everything? Why is anyone doing everything? Why does anyone think the way they think? Why has anyone's opinion changed on anything? Tribal thinking. So, no, Russia in fact needed to invade Ukraine not because of NATO, because of demographics, tribal reasons. Russia is far outpacing Western Europe in Islamization. They have always been Muslims in Russia but due to birth rate differences and mass migration, they are on track to become a majority Muslim nation. Talk to Russians who are aware of this and they are upset about it. Putin himself is primarily responsible for it. He jails his anti-immigration opponents and labels them as Nazis. Putin seems like a no-nonsense guy, but he's more of a globalist than most world leaders today. A part of keeping the public happy is to boost the Slavic population, which is what the annexation of Ukraine has always been about. But this won't be nearly enough to stem the tide, so they will need more white Christian Slavs from surrounding nations, particularly the Baltics, Poland, and Moldova. I mean, this is very similar to how the Democrats thought that all women were going to go out and vote on abortion and everyone's going to vote on trans issues and all this kind of shit. Yeah, look, these issues are of importance to people and they will talk about them and they will worry about them and they will want to do things to improve them. And possibly this incursion into Ukraine, this war in Ukraine, this attempted annexation, which he calls it, of Ukraine, maybe that would benefit these things. Maybe that would benefit the tribal nature of Russia, the white history, increase the white population, and whatever it is that he's talking about here. Yes, I do not deny that those things are may benefit and may be part of the motivation, or at very least, they are included in the strategic conversation in order to speak to people who think at those levels, in order to motivate them to be soldiers, because a lot of soldiers come from this tribal thinking level, and so we want people to go in the army and die, so we need to tell them it's for tribal reasons. And also it is a little bit for tribal reasons. Putin, seems like he genuinely is concerned with his place in history, with Russia as a historical entity, and where it'll be going next, and its situation existentially, culturally, etc. But he used to be in the KGB, which was staunchly anti. They were they're heavily anti-religion and whatever, and would do bad things to these Orthodox Christians. Is that what they have in Russia? Orthodox Christianity? And now he's like, oh, I'm Orthodox. Everyone's Orthodox. Oh my God. Isn't this amazing? We're all Christians. So, you can kind of see that that's a tactic, probably. And I think Putin is aware of this. I don't think he's just there for only these reasons. Maybe he thinks that this will help in those things, but also the idea that it's just this and has nothing to do with the fact that they have said forever, hey, Europe, hey, America, don't fuck with Ukraine. If you do, we will get super scared because we will be completely isolated here. We'll have no access to get into the seas down here, only over here in the ice and whatever. They don't want that. They don't want that. They're scared of that. They're scared of being completely surrounded. They're scared of Europe getting that close and NATO getting that close to them. And they should be. And so that's definitely a part of it too. And these are what we're talking about here is war actions, right? Military actions being met with military actions. And what you're talking about is cultural and demographic tribal downfall. I'm trying to find the right word for it. I can't think of what the right word is, but yeah, like the tribal situation is changing dramatically in a way that's considered negative by Russians and by Putin. but to leap from that to warring actions against a great threat like America, I don't think that's what's going on here. I think that these war actions are to do with war actions. I think these military actions are to do with military actions, and this other tribal stuff, while interesting and of benefit and of value, and it has its place, is not the primary thing. And to many, and a lot of it is actually just propaganda to speak to tribal thinkers like this guy, Millennial Man, and other people who are the people who become soldiers. And especially in Russia, I'm sure that Putin is well aware that some of the power people around him are these old head tribal thinkers, and he just super has to care for them. But yeah, I'm a boom. These are boomer talking points from 2023. How is that? Could you argue against them? Could you engage with them? Could you explain what's wrong with them? Anyway, okay, more ad hominem, and talking points is just first order counterintuition. You did no acknowledgement of Ukraine never having had nukes, and their removal having nothing to do with why they were invaded. Right? Just completely ignore that. Dude, you should say something about that. Maybe if you were wrong about that, you should start worrying about what else you are wrong about. If your filters of information are so weak, so badly put together, that this kind of like shitty information can get across your fucking. You need to build a wall, bro. You need to build a wall in front of your head that's like stops bad information getting in and only lets good information getting in. Stops illegal immigrant information getting into your brain and messing it all up, so that you say things like confidently, the reason why Ukraine was invaded is because they gave up their 200 nukes in order to be peaceful, and that left them a sitting duck to Russia coming in because demilitarization. Dude, they weren't their nukes. That didn't happen. And you're not going to address that at all. You're just going to go, oh, damn, boomer. Whoa, talking points. Whoa, 2023. Shut the fuck up, you absolute moron. Uh, so yeah, maybe you were wrong about that. You should start worrying about what else you're wrong about. But you just moved straight on to more baseless claims, did not engage with anything that I wrote. And this is a pattern with you. This is you doing your very best, right? This is not like we're drunk in a bar going backwards and forwards. This is like days between thinking about what I wrote and then coming back with a reply. This is his very best that he can do, is say that Ukraine had 200 nukes and that when they gave them up, they were left as a sitting duck, and that's why Russia was able to come in. And then when it's pointed out to him that that is not actually correct, nothing, no response, no reaction, just, no, you're a boomer. My parents were boomers, bro. And then I go, hey, there's no point in even trying to converse with you. There's been nothing back since then. Someone else said something about Poland, so I put up some stuff about Poland, showing like how close the relationship is between Trump and Poland. And then I make this other point, just a side point of saying that like it seems that what's going on here is, Trump said, we're not going to go into any more wars. And that's going to make a lot of people angry because they won't need to sell these weapons. They need to make these profits. And so if you're going to stop these wars, people are going to be angry. But those people are not being angry with him. Why not? Because he's going, hey, Europe, you're going to buy weapons from us. This is what's going to happen. We're not going to go in any more wars for now. That's the goal. But in order to keep these guys off my back, these warmonger motherfuckers, they don't really care that much about the wars. They just need the money to keep flowing. They just need to keep selling the weapons. They need someone to need these weapons or go to war. So they're pushing the EU to do that. And if you watch the speech, this first one here, where Poland's president is talking, he says, we need to spend more money and maybe not spend more, but like what we are spending, we need to put that into increased capability. He said we could spend more money on wages, we could raise wages, but that doesn't make us more capable. So we're not going to do that. We're going to spend the money on capability, which is him signaling back to the UK, I think, in humble opinion, Mio. He's signaling back to the US there that, yeah, no worries, bro. We're your close partner here. We are going to spend more money buying American weapons, increased capability, That will keep everybody happy over there. That will keep the people off Trump's back, and he's making the rest of Europe do it. Hey, let's make a European army. Oh my God, we need to fix up our nukes. Maybe the guy is right. Maybe Millennial Man is right about the nukes, and the UK ones need all fixing up, and we need all new tanks and all new this and that, and launching fucking apps and fucking crypto this and that to keep people out of your programs to stop hacking your arms and weapons, and we're going to be buying the most of that from America. It's just a theory I threw out there because it's just you just start smelling things after a while, and then there's this whole thing more of Poland. Then this guy crying about what Vance said, and that's the end. So this guy hasn't come back yet. We'll see if he does. Millennial Man, if he comes back. I don't mind, dude, but I'm not really talking to you anymore. Like, if he comes back, I'm just going to go, hey, bro, what about the 200 Ukrainian nukes? Hey, yeah. But what about the 200? Dude, you need to shut the fuck up. You need to never speak again until you've addressed the 200 Ukrainian nukes. Firstly, publicly, just going, oh, whoops, I'm a dick for saying that. I didn't know what I was talking about. I now realize that I shouldn't overextend myself. But also, just for yourself, dude, you need to, like, go back to the lab and just wonder how much other information has got into how much other illegal immigration information has illegally immigrated into your head that's been sent there by bad actors. All of it, dude, probably because you were completely incapable of identifying that particular piece of information. Now, maybe you're going to come back. Maybe he'll come back and go, oh, this is how I got wrong about that one piece of information. How I messed up on that is this, and this. But I wouldn't normally mess up like that because these are my normal processes that my immigration check-in processes when information is trying to come into my brain that could be from bad actors or could be from good actors, but just bad information nevertheless. What are my filtering processes? These are those. This is how I know what I know. This is why I think what the things that you saying are incorrect. But I very much doubt it because he's not shown any ability to do that so far. He's just like, you fucking, what did he say? Like, scoffed at me. You scoffed at me. Are you on drugs? Boomer, talking points. Dude, what about the 200 fucking nukes? Peace out. That's it. That's all we're doing today, man. How long was this? Oh, an hour and 7 minutes. Nobody's definitely going to watch this, but there you go. Stop the recording.